Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 155, Monday, August the 7th, 2017. I want to do something a little bit different today with the TowerGate video. Obviously, the past several weeks we have been hitting it really hard with a lot of breaking news. There's just been a lot of things going on. Unfortunately, most of them negative. So today I want to try to take a positive view of what we can do, because I know we feel kind of helpless. Sometimes we're sitting back here, we're making videos, we're doing things, but we don't have the ability to call for a special counsel. We don't sit on any congressional committees. We don't have any authority to actually bring people to justice. We just have to sit back and watch this stuff. It becomes very maddening and very frustrating. You become this feeling of helplessness. And so I want to talk about some ideas on what we can do and why we should have some optimism for how this tide could be turned. It's a difficult period right now. We all understand what's going on, and we just can't get discouraged and throw up our hands in frustration and quit or anything like that. And I know none of you who subscribe to my channel are like that. I know we're all fighters, and there's a lot of other fighters all around the country, people who may not be watching my YouTube channel, but they're watching other YouTube channels, and there's a lot of people who are tuned in to what is going on. It's just that right now we're not in positions of authority where we can really do anything like that. But we do get our opportunity every 2 years, because every 2 years the entire House of Representatives is up for re-election and 1/3 of the Senate. So we have an opportunity. Now, I know a lot of people say, yeah, but they've rigged the elections. The establishment has all the money. They can do this, they can do that. It is true that they have the game pretty well rigged, but the game, they have been beaten. They have been beaten badly before in our history. So I want to talk about a recent time in history when they were beaten badly and how we might learn from that and take that idea and use it to propel us to a big victory in the midterms in 2018 and also in 2020. So let's just go back and review for just a moment what exactly happened. What I'm talking about is the Republican Revolution of 1994. So let's go back and review. First of all, let's keep in mind that there was plenty of fuel for the fire to bring about the Republican Revolution in 1994, just like there is plenty of fuel to feed the fire to have another groundbreaking type election scenario that we had in 94. The two things that were really driving 94 was the fact that when Bill Clinton campaigned in 92, he really put a lot of emphasis on the middle class, blue-collar workers, and all the things he was going to do for them. And one of the features of his campaign in 92 was a big middle-class tax cut. Now, what happened was, once Clinton got elected, he went back on his pledge for the middle-class tax cut. He came out and made his press conference and said, yeah, we've worked harder than we've ever worked in our life. We've tried to do everything we can. We've looked at everything. We tried to cut this, try to do that, try to do this. But I'm sorry, folks. It just doesn't look like I'm going to be able to fulfill my campaign promise and give you that middle-class tax cut. Well, this was a major mistake on the part of Bill Clinton. And it would come back to bite him 2 years later in the midterms. Another thing that happened that was probably the thing that really sparked all the outrage was that immediately after becoming president, Bill Clinton put his wife, Hillary Rodham Clinton, in charge of a secret health care commission to reform the health care system, essentially to give us a single-payer system. And so Hillary brought in a bunch of her cronies, and they did kind of a very secretive, behind closed doors series of meetings to put together a new healthcare system. This did not go over well with the American people because Hillary wasn't all that popular anyway, and her secret healthcare commission only added to the dislike and distrust of her by millions of Americans, including Democrats. So it was these two things that really fueled the fire for the 94 Republican Revolution. Now, Newt Gingrich at the time came up with a brilliant idea. he decided to nationalize the midterms. Instead of having what we normally have, which is each candidate running in each district having their own sort of platform and sort of out there running just against their opponent on various issues, Newt Gingrich decided to nationalize that election. He came up with what he called his Contract for America. He came up with 10 items which he knew were very, very popular, including a middle-class tax cut, welfare reform, and various other things. And so what he did was he went around the country, and he was able to get all these Republicans running in these contested elections across the country to sign on to his Contract for America. And so it essentially nationalized the election. He had all these Republicans signed on to the fact that, hey, if you elect us, we will do these 10 things. You give us the Congress, we will do these 10 things. Now keep in mind, the Democrats had controlled both houses of Congress for, well, they controlled the House of Representatives for 40 years. Think about that. 40 years the Democrats had controlled the House of Representatives. And for the most part, they had controlled the Senate as well. There was a couple off years where Republicans did have a slight majority in the Senate, but for the most part, Democrats ran the show in Congress for 40 years. So, what happens? Newt Gingrich puts out his Contract for America. All these Republicans running in races across the country sign on to it, and that, fueled by Bill Clinton's backtracking on his middle-class tax cut and the frustration people had and anger they had with Hillary's secret health care commission, set the perfect stage for the Republican Revolution of 1994, in which Republicans took the House for the first time in 40 years by picking up 54 seats. They also picked up 8 seats in the Senate. And then the day after the election, a Southern senator, I can't remember who it was, but one of the senators in the South switched over from Democrat to Republican. So they actually ended up picking up 9 seats in the Senate, if you want to look at it that way. So it was a huge landslide event. And I remember it very well. The thing that was most surprising about it was that there was no indication. There was nothing to tell anyone that this was going to happen. The Democrats fully expected, excuse me, fully expected it would be an election like any other election, that they would hold on to the House and the Senate, and things would go on as normal. And there were some big name Republicans or big name Democrats taken down in that particular election, including the powerful leader of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dan Rostenkowski. And Rostenkowski not only got voted out, but he also got caught up in the post office postal scam, and he actually ended up going to jail. And so there was some crimes that followed this election that some Democrats got caught up in as well. So here we can see a perfect example of how something extraordinary happened that no one saw coming. So this leads me to where I find myself today, and this has something to do, I got this idea when I was commenting on something that Mr. Chopa said, and one other commenter said, I think it was Donnie, but I think it was Donnie and Mr. Chopa and myself were kind of having a little bit of a back and forth on a comment, and the thing that I was trying to say in my comment, which I'll expand on now, is that, you know, throughout the entire 2016 campaign, I paid very close attention to the Democratic side of the race between Sanders and Clinton and all that went on with that. But I also look a lot at a lot of Democratic sites as well, or progressive sites. I check in regularly at Young Turks, not so much to watch their, I'm not looking at the Young Turks show or even a lot of these other progressive show or listening to what they have to say because I don't really care. Mostly what I'm looking at is the comments, the amount of thumbs up and thumbs down they're getting, and what people are saying in the comments section on their videos. And so I look at the Young Turks, I look at Secular Talk, I look at the Humanist Report, I look at H.A. Goodman, I look at various other left-wing progressive sites, and I'm reading the comments sections. I'm also looking at some of the I guess what you would consider right-wing or conservative or libertarian or constitutionalist or however you want to look at that. I also look at comments from the right. And what I am seeing popping up in the comments section, whether it's on the left or on the right, is that there is a huge amount of dissatisfaction by people with the establishment members of their own parties. In other words, the progressives commenting on these progressive sites despise Hillary Clinton, the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Donna Brazile, Tom Perez, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these people. They're hated by progressives. So there is a war within the Democratic Party by progressives to fight against the establishment Democrats in their party. And this is important. But I also look on the right, and I see where there's many people in comments sections on a lot of the right-wing media, where you see people are very, very frustrated with the establishment Republicans, who are apparently coordinating with Democrats to help destroy Donald Trump and his presidency. And you can see a lot of very angry people here as well. So what this tells me is that the mood is right for another major event to occur in 2018 and or 2020. You could see another situation like what happened in the Republican Revolution back in '94. But this would be different, because instead of this being a move to throw out Democrats and to elect Republicans, this would be a move to throw out existing establishment Republicans who are opposed to Trump and fighting against him, working with the deep state, to toss them out in favor of new, fresh blood primary opponents who could defeat these establishment Republicans. And I know a lot of people think, this is almost impossible to do, but I think when you look at the model that Newt Gingrich laid out by nationalizing elections, I think the exact same thing could be done in 2018 and 2020. And I think it is very likely that we could see this happen. I see the roots in place right now. They are growing. I can see that if this continues moving into 2018, you could see a national movement. And we should not just allow it to happen on accident. As we get closer to the 2018 elections, I'm actually going to be putting out some videos endorsing the idea of a national campaign. A campaign similar to the contract with America. Doesn't necessarily have to have a contract and all that sort of thing, but simply to have a national campaign whereby we take a look at all the districts across the country that are held by Republicans, and take a look at a lot of those Republicans, 95% of which are opposed to Trump and his agenda and are fighting against him. And my idea would be to target in a national style election these establishment Republicans, to make sure that we have good candidates to primary them. Now, in the past, it's been very difficult because the establishment has all the money, they control the media and all that. But again, we are entering into a different paradigm shift. We saw how Barack Obama used social media to defeat Hillary Clinton when he ran against her the first time. We also saw how Donald Trump used social media. Social media is getting more and more powerful and having a bigger impact in elections. It will have an even bigger impact, I think, in 2018 and 2020 as social media and the independent media continue to gain, and as we see the corporate media continuing to lose viewership and support. So we can capitalize on these opportunities. So I believe what we need to do in 2018 is have a nationalization of the campaign in 2018 and also in 2020 to come up with a bunch of candidates who can challenge establishment Republicans. And they all need to sing from the same sheet of music. They all need to have a list of maybe a half a dozen things or so that they can commit to doing, most importantly being to support the president and his agenda. We need someone to run against Paul Ryan and say, hey, and there is a man running against Paul Ryan, a good man. And we just need for him to coordinate with people across the country to primary these establishment politicians and the Republican Party. We'll let the Democrats take care of their own mess, because they'll be having a similar situation where progressives are going to try to throw out establishment Democrats and replace them with progressives. That's their game. Let the Democrats worry about the Democrats. They're not my concern. My concern is the establishment Republicans that are thwarting Trump, trying to thwart Trump, and in fact working with the Democrats to make sure that his legislative agenda fails, and if at all possible to also collaborate with them to bring about his impeachment, if they can do that. So what we need is a national campaign across the country to challenge and primary these establishment Republicans in every voting district. And all these challengers, all they need to do is get together and get behind half a dozen different ideas, the biggest one being to support Trump, and make it a referendum on Donald Trump and the establishment Republicans that are fighting against him. Make it a referendum on these establishment Republicans to take them out. There's no doubt that they understand the shaky ground that they're on. They understand that they are part of the establishment and they have to carry out their end of the deal, but they also understand in a lot of these districts where Trump is very popular that it's a sticky situation for them. I know I have that situation here in Ohio, and I'm sure it's true in just about every voting district across the country. So this is where we need to start thinking and where we need to become more optimistic. Let's not underestimate the power that we have in social media and independent media. Let's not underestimate the amount of anger and frustration that is out there, and let's not underestimate the importance of each and every vote that we cast. Remember, we were told that Trump couldn't win. He defeated 17 establishment Republicans. We were told he couldn't beat the anointed one, Hillary Clinton. And he did it, and he did it, and he won by 70 electoral votes. Take a look at the map of the country. It's 85% red. It's almost all red. The only problem is that a lot of those Republicans representing those red voting districts throughout the country are on the wrong team. They are working the wrong agenda, and we need to make them pay a heavy price for that. And the best thing to do is to defeat them. And this can be done. It's been done before, as I just laid out. And so I think that what we need to do is to focus on a national agenda, get hundreds of Republicans across the country running, primarying these establishment Republicans, and to focus primarily on making it a decision for voters between either you're voting to continue this establishment Republican who's going to fight the president, or you can select to go with this challenger who will support the president and his agenda. Make the entire 2018 midterm elections a contest between supporting the president or continuing to fight the president. And if we do that, I think we win. I think the president wins. I think the establishment Republicans are left hanging in that deal. And so I think that that's what we need to be focusing in, and we need to remember that even though as we get frustrated moving through this process, that there are things that we can do. Obviously, we're doing one of those things now. We're making videos. We're sharing those videos. We're keeping the information out there. We're following these stories. We're making sure that they stay active on social media. We don't really need to rely on the corporate media anymore. We're beating them. If you look at a lot of major YouTubers, when you combine them all together, they have far more viewership and influence than the corporate media, which has pretty much lost most of its credibility at this point. Even Fox News is not really on the team, if you know what I mean. So I don't really look at Fox as being any different than any of the others. I think we need to focus on what we're doing, and that's why it's so important that we watch these videos of independent YouTubers, that we share this information on social media sites, and that we keep these stories out there, that we keep talking about the obstruction, that we keep talking about the Seth Rich situation, that we keep talking about the situation with the DNC and the Iwan brothers and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and we keep talking about the James Comey, and we keep talking about the surveillance, the unmasking. We just need to keep these topics on the burner, keep the heat turned up, and not give the corporate media any rest whatsoever. We need to stay on these stories and keep promoting them, keep talking about them, keep them at the top of the news agenda that we control on social media. That's a very important point, and it should not be underestimated. The power of your voice, even when you just get on a YouTube video, whether it's mine or anyone else's, and you make a comment. This is a very, very powerful thing that you should not underestimate, the amount of power that you have just by making a comment on a YouTube video, because it all adds up and it keeps everything moving in the right direction. And as long as we keep the pressure turned up, we keep the heat turned up, then when the time comes that we can all go out and vote, hopefully we've prepared a nice battlefield for us to engage in the final battle, in the major battle, which occurs every election. That is where the rubber meets the road. That is where we get our opportunity to use the power that we have to actually cast a vote. And again, people who believe that you cannot experience big success this way is simply not paying attention to the history of our country. 1994 was not the only time that we've seen a major shift, a seismic shift in the politics of the country. We saw it in the 1930s, we saw it in the 1890s, we saw it in the 1860s, we saw it in the 1820s, and of course we saw it with our revolution in 1776. So there have been many examples in history where, in American history, where the electorate has had a major impact and has had a major role to play in the political affairs of the country. We're not just sitting back here as spectators, having no voice and having no power whatsoever. We do have a voice and we do have power. We need to continue using it. We just need to be a little more cohesive and a little more organized and have a strategy, have a plan, a battle plan to win, a battle plan for victory. And I believe that that battle plan will be to nationalize the midterm elections, to get hundreds of Republicans across the country to sign on to a handful of agenda items that they will do, and the dominant factor and what they're running on should be to support the president. To support the president or not support the president. That should be the question that is put to every voter, so that when they go in to vote in the midterms in 2018, they know that when they check off on that box, that they're checking off to either continue the obstruction of the president by the Republican that represents them, or to throw them out and vote for the challenger, who is campaign is based on standing with the president and helping him to accomplish his agenda, as well as to hold the criminals accountable, not just to talk about it or play pretend, but to actually say, yes, elect me, throw out Paul Ryan and elect me, and I will support the president's agenda. I will vote and push hard for hearings into the criminal activities that have occurred. I will support reopening the Hillary Clinton email investigation. I will support getting a special counsel to look into the obstruction by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, by James Comey, by Obama, by Jarrett, by all these people. So this is what we need. We need a nationalized campaign, an organized effort in 2018, and keep that flowing into 2020 for Trump's reelection. And I think that we could see a major political event like we saw in '94. And as I said, I've been looking very, very closely at the comments people have been leaving on these social media sites, both on the left and on the right, and I can tell you that there is a ground swell working right now. And as long as we continue to stay out front and stay active with our social media activism, as we're doing now, and just participating in this video and comments and things like that, we can clearly see that there is a strong movement abroad in the country already We don't have to start this movement. It's already starting on its own. And it's being driven by what you and I and other people are feeling, that the Republicans are not our friends, that they're no friend of Donald Trump. They don't have his back. In fact, they're participating in the deep state coup. And I think a lot of people understand how serious this is and why we need to really focus hard on this particular midterm election and take full advantage. The only thing we need to do is coordinate our efforts and direct our energy toward a common goal of defeating the establishment Republicans. This is very doable. We can do it. We should do it. And I believe we can and will do it as long as we get some leadership. Hopefully, we'll see someone like a Newt Gingrich or someone who has, a couple million followers on Facebook or on YouTube or what have you. I am kind of a small channel right now, but 1,000 small YouTube channels like mine are very important, as well as the larger channels, because the stuff that we talk about does flow into the comments and to other larger YouTube channels, and eventually can flow into other forms of media as well. So we just need to get the ball rolling and begin the groundswell. The desire is already there. The fuel for this fire is already there. Everything is in place. All we need to do is strike the match and start the brush fire. Ron Paul used to talk about the brush fires, and we saw that a lot in his 2008 campaign. It was like a brush fire sweeping the country. And the same thing can happen again. Samuel Adams, this is what he talked about back during the Revolution, was he talked about starting brush fires in people's minds. These brush fires are already burning, my friends. They're burning all across the country. I see it in the comments section of videos that I'm watching, both on the left and on the right. Now, we're not concerned about the left. That's their problem, and their problem is a far greater problem than ours. We just need to have a very successful midterm. We need to primary all these establishment Republicans. We need to throw them out and replace them with good Republicans. And I am not a Republican, by the way, but you really have two choices in this country. You either vote Republican or Democrat. Really, you can do a protest vote, which is typically what I do, but there comes a time when you have to win. And the way to win is to throw out the deep state political elite class that's working to orchestrate a coup to take down the president. And a lot of people are angry about it. I'm picking up on this, and it's not just recently either. I was picking up on this. That's why Trump won. Trump won for a reason. Clearly, there was 17 opponents, governors. You had a libertarian Senator Rand Paul. You had a doctor, Ben Carson. You had two governors. You had Kasich and Scott Walker. You had the establishment big money guy, Bush, with the name and all the money and all the organization. You had a really wide array of individuals out there, and Donald Trump defeated them all, and he did so pretty handily. This tells us, and I remember reading the comment section and videos back then, and it was the same type of thing, but now it's been ramped up more and more and more. The fact that Donald Trump won and then defeated Hillary, the anointed one, tells us, gives us actual factual proof, as well as what we saw in '94, that you can beat the establishment. We did it in 2016. We need to beat them again in 2018 and 2020. And where we need to focus now is we need to focus on the deep state criminals, which are currently in the Congress. Donald Trump cannot drain the congressional swamp. Only the voters can do that. We have a golden opportunity ahead of us. We have a very, very good opportunity. The brush fires have been lit. The fires have been set. They are sweeping across the country. We just need to stay on our game, keep doing what we're doing, keep up the participation level, keep up the fight, make sure that the important things that we should be talking about stay on the top of the bill in the comment section and all the social media that we have out there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We need to make sure that we keep these topics on the burner and keep the heat turned up. And then, as we approach the 2018 elections, it will then be time to organize that strategy and I think a nationalized strategy is the way to go. And I'll be working on that. I'll be working on that and working along with some fellow YouTubers who that I speak with from time to time. There's some good YouTubers out there, and I'm going to be working with some of them to try to get this campaign to nationalize the 2018 elections the same way it was done in '94, the same way it was done in the 1890s, to bring about a big victory, to save the republic, to save Trump's presidency. In the meantime, keep fighting, and don't get discouraged. Keep up the faith. We've won before, and we will win again. We're on the right track. We just need to stay focused, and we're all going to be fine. I appreciate y'all tuning in. This has been TowerGate, day 155, August the 7th, 2017, Monday. Thank you for tuning in, subscribing to my videos. I'll look forward to reading your comments in the comments section. You guys keep the faith, and be happy. Have a good night. Bye.